Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Pioneer's Edge. He was looking at the stars through the big window when his communications officer spoke up. "Sir, we have incoming ships," Amy Johnson said from her station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry in it. "How many?" Jake asked, walking over to look at her screen. 200 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're big ones." Jake felt his stomach drop. His small patrol fleet had only 12 ships. They were out here, doing routine checks on the border. Systems when this happened. He never expected to run into a full enemy fleet. "Wake up, everyone," he ordered. "Battle stations. Get me Captain Brooks and Lieutenant Carter on the com." Ryan Brooks appeared on the main screen first. He was the tactical officer and Jake's best friend since training school. "Jake, my sensors are going crazy. What are we looking at?" "Big trouble," Jake said. "Lisa, you there?" Navigation Officer Lisa Carter's face joined the screen. "Present, sir. I've got our position locked. We can jump out in 30 seconds if needed." "Good. Keep that option ready." Jake turned back to Amy. "Any messages from the incoming fleet?" "Yes, sir. They're demanding we surrender immediately. They say resistance is useless." Jake almost laughed. Almost. Put them on screen. The main display changed to show a large reptilian face. The creature had green scales, yellow eyes, and sharp teeth. It looked angry and proud at the same time. "I am Admiral Kethfer of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said in perfect English. "You will surrender your ships and submit to our rule. Your primitive weapons cannot harm us." Jake stepped forward. "This is Commander Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You are in human space. Leave now or face the consequences." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Human space? You control nothing, primitive creature. We have conquered 47 star systems. Your 12 tiny ships are nothing against our mighty fleet." "Maybe," Jake said. "But we won't go down without a fight. Then you will die like the others who opposed us." The alien cut the transmission. Jake looked around his bridge. Amy was checking her equipment. Lisa was preparing jump coordinates. Ryan was loading weapons. Nobody looked scared. They all looked ready. "Sir," Ryan said, "their ships are old designs, big and slow. Our ships are faster and more flexible. What's the plan?" Lisa asked. Jake studied the tactical display. The enemy ships were moving in. A straight line toward them. It was a classic formation for overwhelming force. But it had weaknesses. "We're not going to fight them head-on," Jake said. "We're going to hit and run. Use our speed. Hit them from different angles and disappear before they can respond." "That's risky," Amy said. "If they catch us... They won't catch us if we're smart about it." Jake activated the fleet comm. "All ships, this is Morrison. We're going to show these lizards what human tactics look like." The 12 human ships spread out in a wide formation. They were small compared to the enemy fleet, but they moved like dancers, while the alien ships moved like freight trains. Jake gave the order to attack. The human ships swooped in from 3 directions at once. Their weapons fired precise shots at the enemy ships' weak points. The aliens tried to return fire, but the human ships were already gone, moving to new positions. "Direct hit on their lead ship," Ryan reported. "Their shields are down. Keep moving," Jake ordered. "Don't let them get a lock on us." The battle turned into a deadly game of tag. The human ships would appear, strike, and vanish before the aliens could respond. The enemy's big guns were useless against targets that wouldn't stay still. Admiral Kethfer's voice came over the comm again. "Stand still and fight like warriors." "This is how humans fight," Jake replied. "Don't like it? Go home." For 3 hours, the small human fleet danced around the massive alien force. They targeted engines, weapons, and command centers. The aliens grew more and more frustrated as their ships were picked apart. "Sir," Amy reported, "we've destroyed 43 enemy ships and damaged twice that many." Jake was amazed. They had taken out nearly half the enemy fleet and only lost 2 of their own ships. But they were running low on ammunition and fuel. "Time to go," he decided. "All ships, prepare for jump." "You run like cowards," Admiral Kethfor screamed over the comm. "We run like professionals," Jake replied. "This was just a warm-up. Wait until you meet our real fleet." The human ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving the damaged alien fleet behind. Jake sat in his command chair, breathing hard. They had won, but barely. "Sir," Lisa said, "should I report?" "This to command?" "Oh, yes," Jake said. "Tell them the Zephyrians are coming. And tell them what we learned today." "What did we learn?" Amy asked. Jake smiled. "We learned that these aliens are used to easy victories. They don't know how to fight an enemy that thinks. That's going to be their downfall." As the pioneers Edge flew toward human space, Jake looked at the stars again. The aliens thought they had fought the human military today. They had no idea they had only fought a patrol unit. The real Earth Defense Force was much larger and much more dangerous. War was just beginning, and the aliens had no idea what they were up against. Supreme Admiral Vexter slammed his clawed hand on the metal table. The sound echoed through the command room of his flagship, Dominion's Wrath. Around him, his officers stood silent and afraid. "Explain this to me again," he growled, his yellow eyes burning with anger. "How did 12 tiny ships destroy 43 of our vessels?" General Thakson, his military advisor, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, the humans used unusual tactics. They didn't fight in formation. They attacked from all sides and disappeared before we could respond." "Impossible," Vexter hissed. "Our weapons are superior. Our ships are bigger and stronger. How can primitives defeat us?" Intelligence Chief Mordique stepped forward. "Sir, perhaps the humans are not as primitive as we thought. Their ships are fast and their pilots are skilled." Vexter's tail lashed behind him. "Skilled? They ran away. What kind of skill is that?" "The kind that wins battles," Mordic said quietly. The Supreme Admiral turned his angry gaze on his intelligence chief. "Are you defending them?" "No, sir. I'm trying to understand them. If we don't learn from this defeat, we'll make the same mistakes again." Before Vexter could respond, an aide rushed into the room. "Sir, we have reports of another human attack. They hit our supply depot in the Kepler system." "What? How many?" "Ships? Only 8, sir. But they destroyed everything. Our fuel supplies, our ammunition, our food stores, everything." Vexter felt his anger grow even hotter. 8 ships? 8 ships did this much damage? The aide nodded nervously. "Yes. Sir, they used some kind of new weapon. Very precise. They hit exactly what they wanted to hit and nothing else." Captain Ben Taylor smiled as he watched the enemy supply depot burn. His ship, the Defiant Star, floated safely in space with 7 other human vessels. The attack had taken only 20 minutes. "Nice work, everyone," he said into his comm. "Clean strike. No civilian casualties." His engineer, Kate Phillips, looked up from her station. "Sir, we used very little ammunition. These new targeting systems are amazing. The aliens don't know what hit them," added Sam Martinez, the weapons officer. "Their defenses were designed for big fleet battles, not precision strikes." Ben nodded. The human military had learned a lot from the first encounter with the Zephyrians. The aliens fought like they were still in the old days, with massive formations and overwhelming force. But modern warfare was about precision, speed, and intelligence. "Kate, how long until the enemy reinforcements arrive?" he asked. 30 minutes, sir. Maybe less. Then we better get out of here. Set course for the rally point. As the human ships jumped to hyperspace, Ben thought about the war. The Zephyrians were strong, but they were also predictable. They always did the same thing: gather a huge fleet and attack head-on. It worked against species that fought the same way. But humans had learned to fight differently. Back on the Dominion's Wrath, Vexter was reading intelligence reports. The humans had hit supply depots, communication stations, and patrol bases all along the border. Small groups of ships were causing massive damage to the Empire's war effort. "Sir," Mordick said, "I've been analyzing the human communications we intercepted. What did you find?" "They keep talking about advanced scouts and preliminary operations. They mentioned something called forward reconnaissance units." Vexter's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "I think it means the forces we've been fighting are not their main military. They might be just scouts, checking our defenses." The Supreme Admiral laughed. "Ridiculous. If these are their scouts, their main force can't be much bigger. These primitives don't have the resources to build a large fleet." "But sir, what if we're wrong? What if these small forces are just the beginning?" Vexter stood up to his full height. "Then we'll crush them with overwhelming force. Prepare 5,000 ships for invasion. We'll show these humans what real power looks like." In another part of the ship, Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in a prison cell. She was a human xenobiologist who had been captured during the first battle. The Zephyrians wanted to question her about human society and military strength. 2 guards brought her to an interrogation room. Admiral Cathfor was waiting for her. His scales were darker now, and he looked tired. "Sit down, human," he ordered. Elena sat calmly. She had been trained for this situation. "What do you want to know?" "Your military strength. How many ships do you have? How many soldiers?" Elena smiled. "Why would I tell you that?" "Because if you don't, we'll destroy every human world we find." "You're already trying to do that," Elena said, "so threatening me won't work." Cathfor leaned forward. "Your small fleets have been lucky so far, but luck runs out. When our main invasion force arrives, your resistance will crumble." "Your main invasion force?" Elena tried to sound worried. "How many ships?" 5,000 of our finest vessels. More than enough to sweep away your pathetic defenses." Elena pretended to look shocked. 5,000? That's a lot. "Finally, you understand. Your advanced scouts and reconnaissance units won't save you then." Elena hid her smile. The alien had just revealed important information. They thought the human forces they'd been fighting were advanced scouts. They had no idea those were just patrol units and local militias. "I suppose you're right," she said sadly. "Our forward units can't stand against such a force." "No, they can't. So you might as well tell me about your defenses." "It will save lives." Elena shook her head. "I won't betray my people. But I will say this. You have no idea what you're up against." Cathfor's eyes glowed with anger. "We'll see about that." As the guards took Elena back to her cell, she thought about the conversation. The Zephyrians were making a huge mistake. They thought they understood human military organization, but they didn't. They were about to attack with 5,000 ships, thinking they would face only small patrol fleets. They were going to be very surprised when they met the real human military. The invasion was coming, and the aliens still didn't understand what they were really fighting. They thought they had seen human strength, but they had only seen the tip of the iceberg. Elena smiled in her cell. Soon, the Zephyrians would learn the difference between human scouts and human soldiers. It would be a lesson they would never forget. The Zephyrian invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the human colony world of New Terra. 5,000 ships spread across space like a metal cloud, blocking out the stars. Supreme Admiral Vexter stood on his bridge, confident that this overwhelming force would crush human resistance once and for all. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Show these primitives the true power of the Empire." But as the first wave of ships approached the planet, something unexpected happened. Hidden weapons platforms suddenly appeared from behind asteroids and space debris. Missiles launched from concealed positions all around the system. Colonel Alex Wright watched the enemy fleet from his command bunker deep underground on New Terra. He had been preparing for this invasion for months. The early warning from Commander Morrison's patrol had given them time to set up defenses. "Sir, the enemy is taking heavy casualties," reported Major Sarah Thompson from her position at the tactical display. "Our hidden platforms are hitting them hard." "Good," Alex said, "but this is just the beginning. They'll adapt quickly." "Tony, are the evacuation routes clear?" Lieutenant Commander Tony Clark nodded. "All civilians are in the deep shelters. The resistance cells are in position." Alex looked at the display showing the enemy fleet. Even with their surprise attack, the humans were still outnumbered 50-1. But they had advantages the aliens didn't expect. The first Zephyrian landing ships reached the planet's surface. They expected to find defenseless cities and cowering humans. Instead, they found empty buildings and booby traps. Every street corner became a kill zone. Every building hid human soldiers with advanced weapons. Captain Maria Santos led one of the evacuation teams through the underground tunnels. Her job was to get civilians to safety while the military fought the invaders. But she wasn't just running away. "Team 3, this is Maria," she spoke into her radio. "The aliens just entered Sector 7. The trap is ready." "Copy that, Maria. Triggering the charges now." A explosion could be felt through the rock walls of the tunnel. Above them, an entire city block collapsed on the alien soldiers. It was a harsh welcome to human warfare. Meanwhile, her husband Nick Santos was flying one of the few remaining human fighters in the asteroid belt around the planet. His job was to hit the enemy supply ships and then disappear before they could catch him. "This is Nick to all fighter squadrons," he said over the com. "Enemy supply convoy approaching from the north. Let's give them a warm welcome." The 6 human fighters swooped down on the alien convoy like hunting birds. They fired precise shots at the engines and fuel tanks of the supply ships. Within minutes, the convoy was destroyed. "Nice work, everyone," Nick said. "Now let's get out of here before their escorts arrive." The fighters vanished into the asteroid field, using the rocks for cover. The alien escort ships arrived to find only burning wreckage and no sign of the attackers. On the surface, Admiral Kethfer was leading the ground invasion personally. He had expected an easy victory, but every step forward cost him soldiers. The humans fought from hidden positions, struck without warning, and disappeared before he could respond. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we've taken the capital city." "Excellent," Kethfer said. "How many casualties?" 3,000 dead, sir. 5,000 wounded." Kethfer's satisfaction disappeared. 3,000 to take one city? "The humans fight differently than anyone we've encountered before, sir. They don't hold positions. They attack and retreat, attack and retreat. We never know where they'll strike next." "Cowards," Kethfer growled. "They don't fight with honor." "No, sir. But they fight effectively." The invasion continued for weeks. The Zephyrians captured territory, but they paid a terrible price for every mile. The humans used the planet's geography against them, turning forests into maze-like battlefields and cities into death traps. Then the human reinforcements arrived. Admiral Patricia Hayes brought 200 ships from the core systems. It wasn't a huge fleet compared to the Zephyrian invasion force, but these were professional military vessels with experienced crews. This is Admiral Hayes to all human forces, she announced over the comm. The cavalry has arrived. Time to show these invaders what real soldiers can do. Her tactical officer, Commander Luke Johnson, was already planning the counterattack. Ma'am, the enemy has spread their forces across the entire planet. They're trying to hold too much territory, with too few soldiers. Classic mistake, Patricia? Said, Janet, what's our intelligence on their command structure? Colonel Janet Miller, the fleet's intelligence chief, pulled up the tactical display. They're using centralized command, ma'am. All orders come from their flagship in orbit. If we can disrupt their communications, their ground forces will be confused and isolated. Patricia smiled. Luke, prepare the fleet for orbital assault. Janet, I want you to coordinate with our ground forces. It's time to teach these aliens about combined operations. The human counterattack began at dawn. While Patricia's ships engaged the Zephyrian fleet in orbit, General Paul Anderson led the ground forces in a coordinated assault on the invaders' positions. The aliens found themselves caught between two forces. The human ships above attacked their orbital support, while the human soldiers below struck at their supply lines and communication centers. Sir, an aide reported to Admiral Kethfer, we're losing contact with half our ground forces. The humans are jamming our communications. How? Is that possible? Kethfer demanded. Their technology is inferior to ours. Maybe their technology is different, not inferior, the aide suggested carefully. Kethfer was about to respond when explosions rocked his command center. Human soldiers had infiltrated the building and were attacking from inside. Impossible, he muttered. How did they get past our defenses? The answer came from Captain Maria Santos, who appeared in the doorway with a squad of human soldiers. We didn't go past your defenses, she said. We went under them. These tunnels have been here for months. The battle for New Terra turned into a disaster for the Zephyrians. They had come expecting an easy victory against a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that used every advantage of terrain, technology, and tactics. 3 months of fighting, the Zephyrians controlled less territory than when they started. They had lost over 1,000 ships and tens of thousands of soldiers. The humans, meanwhile, seemed to grow stronger with each battle. Supreme Admiral Vexter received the reports from New Terra with growing concern. His mighty invasion force was being torn apart by what he thought were colonial militias and border guards. Sir, Intelligence Chief Mordek said carefully, perhaps we should reconsider our intelligence about human military strength. What do? You mean? The forces we're fighting. They're too organized, too skilled to be just colonial defenses. And they keep mentioning something about their main fleet still being en route. Vexter's blood turned cold. Their main fleet? You mean there are more of them? I'm afraid so, sir. Much more. For the first time since the war began, Supreme Admiral Vexter felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. If these were just the human border guards and colonial militias, what would their real military be like? He was about to find out. Commander Ashley Davis sat across from the captured Zephyrian officer in the interrogation room. The alien's scales were dulled with exhaustion, and his yellow eyes showed defeat. Next to Ashley, analysts Robert Kim and Michelle Foster took notes on everything the prisoner said. Tell me about your fleet organization, Ashley said calmly. How many ships does your empire have? The Zephyrian officer, whose name was Captain Zelnar, looked up wearily. Why should I tell you anything? You? Humans fight without honor. You hide in shadows and strike from behind. We fight to win, Ashley replied, just like you do. The difference is we're better at it. Zelnar made a sound that might have been bitter laughter. Better? You use tricks and deception. When our main battle fleets arrive, your tricks won't. Save you? Robert Kim leaned forward. Main battle fleets? How many ships are coming? Thousands more, Zelmar said. What you've seen is nothing compared to what's coming. Ashley and her team exchanged glances. They had been analyzing captured Zephyrian communications and were starting to understand something important about their enemy. Captain, Ashley said, I think there's something you don't understand about us. What's that? The forces that have been defeating you, they're not our main military either. Zelmar's eyes widened. What do you mean? I mean the ships you've been fighting, the soldiers who've been beating you. They're our border patrol and colonial defense forces. Our real military hasn't arrived yet. The alien captain stared at her in disbelief. Impossible. You're lying. Michelle Foster pulled up a data pad. Captain, what do you think the population of human space is? I don't know. A few million? Maybe. 10 million? Try 47 billion, Michelle said. Across 600 star systems. Zelmar's mouth fell open. That's impossible. Our intelligence said humans were a small, primitive species. Your intelligence was wrong, Ashley said. Dead wrong. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian flagship, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was being brought to Supreme Admiral Vexther's private office. The alien leader looked older than when she had first seen him. The war was taking its toll. Sit down, human, Vexther said, but his voice lacked its earlier arrogance. Elena sat and waited. She had been planning this conversation for weeks. Your people have been more difficult than expected, Vexther admitted. But surely you must see that resistance is futile. We have 5,000 ships. Had, Elena corrected. You had 5,000 ships. How many do you have now? Vexther's eyes flashed with anger, but he didn't answer. They both knew he had lost nearly half his fleet. I want to make you an offer, Elena said. Call off this invasion. Withdraw your forces. Go back to your own space and never return. In exchange for what? In exchange for your lives. Vexther laughed, but it sounded forced. You're hardly in a position to make threats, prisoner. Elena smiled. Am I? Let me ask you something. What do you think you've been fighting all this time? Your military forces, obviously. No, Elena said. You've been fighting our advanced scouts, our colonial defense forces, our border patrol. You know what we call the forces you've been fighting? Vexther leaned forward despite himself. We call them weekend warriors, part-time soldiers, citizens who train a few hours a week in case of emergency. The alien's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Haven't you wondered why these primitive humans keep mentioning that their main fleet is still coming? Why they keep talking about primary battle groups and core system defense forces? Vexther said nothing, but Elena could see the fear growing in his eyes. Let me explain something to you, Elena continued. The United Earth Naval Command has been preparing for this war for 50 years. We have battle fleets that make your invasion force look like a patrol squadron. We have weapons you can't imagine and tactics your strategists have never seen. If that's true, why haven't they arrived yet? Because they're still mobilizing. Do you know how long it takes to coordinate the movement of 50,000 ships? How about planning the logistics for 1 million soldiers? Vexther's hands were shaking now. 50,000 ships? That's just the first wave, Elena said casually. The real Earth Defense Force has been building for decades. Every human world has shipyards. Every human city has military academies. We've been preparing for a war like this since we first left our home planet. The Supreme Admiral stood up abruptly and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the stars, but they didn't look as friendly as they once had. You're trying to frighten me, he said. I'm trying to save your life, Elena replied, and the lives of your soldiers. At that moment, an aide burst into the room. Sir, urgent message from our deep space sensors. What is it? We're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of human space. Thousands of ships, sir. Maybe tens of thousands. Vexter felt his world collapse around him. Show me. The aide activated a holographic display. It showed a three-dimensional map of local space. From the direction of human territory, a massive fleet was approaching. The sensor readings were almost unbelievable. How many ships? Vexter whispered. We estimate at least 30,000, sir. And they're still coming. Elena stood up. That would be Admiral Jonathan Pierce with the Third Fleet. He's probably wondering why you're taking so long to surrender. As if summoned by her words, the communication system activated. A human voice filled the room. This is Admiral Pierce of the United Earth Naval Command, commanding the 3rd and 5th Battle Groups. Zephyrian forces, you are ordered to surrender immediately. You have engaged our forward reconnaissance units and colonial defense forces. Our primary battle fleets are now arriving. You have 1 hour to respond. The message was accompanied by detailed sensor data showing the approaching human forces. Ships larger than anything in the Zephyrian fleet, weapons platforms that dwarfed their most powerful vessels, and fighter squadrons that numbered in the thousands. Vexter sank into his chair. This is impossible. How can one species have so many ships? Easy, Elena said. We're not one species anymore. We're a civilization. Humans and the dozen other species who have joined us. We've been building this fleet for 3 generations, preparing for the day when someone would try to conquer us. Why didn't you use this fleet from the beginning? Because we hoped you would be reasonable. We hoped you would realize that attacking us was a mistake and withdraw. We gave you every chance to avoid this. Vexter looked at the sensor displays again. The approaching human fleet was massive beyond comprehension. His invasion force, which had seemed so powerful when it left Zephyrian space, was nothing compared to what was coming. What do you want? He asked quietly. Immediate withdrawal from all human space. Reparations for the damage you've caused. And a guarantee that this will never happen again. And if I refuse? Elena looked at him with something. That might have been pity. Then you'll find out what happens when humans stop playing games and start fighting for real. The communication system crackled to life again. Zephyrian fleet, this is Admiral Pierce. You now have 55 minutes to respond. I suggest you use them wisely. Vexter closed his eyes. His mighty empire, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was about to be crushed by a species he had thought was primitive. The worst part was, he was beginning to understand that the humans had been holding back. They had been giving him chances to surrender, and he had been too proud to take them. Now, it might be too late. Supreme Admiral Vexter called an emergency meeting with his surviving fleet commanders. The great conference room of the Dominion's wrath, once filled with confident voices planning conquest, now held only worried whispers and fearful glances. Gentlemen, Vexter began, his voice heavy with defeat. We face a choice. Surrender or face complete destruction. Admiral Kethvar, his scales still bearing scars from the ground fighting on New Terra, spoke first. Sir, surely we can negotiate. We still have over 2,000 ships. Look at the displays, Vexter said, pointing to the tactical screens. The approaching human fleet has 30,000 ships. And according to our prisoner, this is only their first response force. General Thaksin studied the sensor readings. Sir, their ships are larger than ours. Their weapons signatures are off the charts. If even half of this data is accurate, we're facing a force that could destroy our entire empire. The humans have been playing with us, Intelligence Chief Mordek said quietly. Everything we've fought so far has been a test. They've been studying. U.S., learning our tactics, preparing for this moment. Outside the conference room, the human fleet was arriving in waves. Admiral Helen Crawford commanded the first battle group from her flagship, the Titan's Hammer. Her fleet alone was larger than the original Zephyrian invasion force. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from several alien ships." "Hold position," Helen ordered. "Let them sweat a little longer. Admiral Pierce wants to handle the negotiations personally." Admiral Richard Stone's second battle group took position on the other side of the alien fleet. His ships were the newest in the human fleet, equipped with weapons that the Zephyrians had never seen before. "Admiral Stone to all ships," he announced. "Form a perimeter around the alien fleet. No one gets out without permission." The Zephyrians found themselves surrounded by a force that dwarfed their own. Everywhere they looked, human ships appeared. Massive battleships, sleek destroyers, and carriers launching thousands of fighters that Vice Admiral Karen White, known throughout the human fleet for her tactical genius, studied the alien formation from her command ship. "They're trying to bunch up for protection," she observed. "Classic defensive formation. It won't help them." Commander Jack Thompson, piloting the experimental dreadnought Earthshaker, received special orders from Admiral Pierce. "Jack, I want you to demonstrate our new precision weapons. Disable their flagship's weapons, but don't destroy it." "Copy that, sir." One surgical strike coming up. The Earthshaker moved forward, its massive bulk dwarfing even the largest Zephyrian ships. Its weapons charged with a sound that vibrated through space itself. On the Dominion's wrath, Vexter watched in horror as the human dreadnought approached. "All weapons, target that ship." "Sir, our weapons are powering up, but ... double quotes," the Earthshaker fired once. A beam of pure energy struck the Zephyrian flagship with surgical precision. Every weapon on the ship was destroyed, but the ship itself remained intact. The crew was unharmed, but completely helpless. "Impossible," Vexter whispered. "They could have destroyed us completely, but they chose not to." Admiral Pierce's voice filled the bridge. "Supreme Admiral Vexter, this is Admiral Pierce. We have demonstrated that we can destroy your fleet at will. We choose not to because we are not conquerors. We are defenders. You attacked us. We did not attack you." Vexter activated his communication system. "Admiral Pierce, we surrender, completely and unconditionally." "I'm glad to hear that. But before we discuss terms, I want you to understand something. The forces you have been fighting for the past months were not our military. They were our border patrol, our colonial defense forces, and our civilian militia." "I know," Vexter said quietly. "We learned that too late. You attacked what we consider our children and grandparents," Pierce continued. "Our weekend warriors and part-time soldiers, and they beat you. Imagine what our professional military would have done." The communication was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. The human crews listened with pride, while the Zephyrians listened with growing shame. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now freed from her cell, stood beside Admiral Pierce on his bridge. "Admiral, I think they understand now." "I hope so," Pierce replied, "because this message is going out to every species in the galaxy." He activated the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Admiral Pierce of the United Earth Naval Command to all ships and all species listening to this transmission. The Zephyrian Empire attacked human space unprovoked. They were defeated by our reserve forces and local militias. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks humanity is weak or divided." The message was recorded and transmitted across the galaxy. Within hours, every spacefaring civilization would know what had happened here. On New Terra, Colonel Alex Wright received the news of the surrender. His forces had been fighting for months, and now it was over. Major Sarah Thompson joined him on the observation deck of their command bunker. "Hard to believe it's finished," she said. "Is it?" Alex asked. "This was just one empire. There are others out there." "Then they'll learn the same lesson," Sarah replied. "Don't mess with humans." The peace negotiations took place aboard Admiral Pierce's flagship. Dr. Elena Rodriguez served as the translator and cultural advisor. She had spent months studying the Zephyrians and understood their psychology better than anyone. "The first term is simple," Admiral Pierce announced to the Zephyrian delegation. "Complete withdrawal from all human space, immediately." Supreme Admiral Vexter nodded. "Agreed." "Second, reparations for the damage caused to our colonies and the families of our casualties." "How much?" Vexter asked. Admiral Pierce named a pool, figure that made the alien's eyes widen. It was enormous, but not impossible for the Empire to pay. "Third, and most important," Pierce continued, "you will send a message to every species in the galaxy. You will tell them exactly what happened here. You will explain that you attacked what you thought was the human military, but was actually just our local defense forces." Vexter's pride rebelled against this demand. "You want us to broadcast our humiliation?" "I want you to broadcast the truth," Pierce said firmly. "Other species need to know that attacking humanity is a mistake. Your shame might save lives." "Doctor." Elena Rodriguez leaned forward. "Admiral Vexter, let me explain something about human nature. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to be left alone to live our lives and explore the stars. But if you force us to fight, we will fight with everything we have." "I understand that now," Vexter said. "We thought you were weak because you didn't immediately attack us with your full force. We gave you chances to retreat because we hoped you would be wise enough to take them," Elena explained. "We prefer peace to war, but we're very, very good at war when we have to be." The negotiations continued for hours. In the end, the Zephyrians agreed to all human demands. They would withdraw, pay reparations, and most importantly, spread the word about what really happened. As the alien fleet prepared to leave human space, Supreme Admiral Vexter requested one final conversation with Admiral Pierce. "Admiral, May? I ask you something?" "Of course." "How long have humans been preparing for a war like this?" Pierce smiled. "Since the day we first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Every human generation has asked the same question. What if someone out there wants to hurt us? So we prepared. We built ships, trained soldiers, and developed tactics, just in case. And if we had not attacked, if we had come in peace, then you would have found the most welcoming species in the galaxy. Humans love making new friends. We would have shared our technology, our culture, our friendship. We would have invited you to join our alliance." Vexter felt a deep sadness. "We chose the wrong path." "Yes," Pierce agreed, "but it's not too late to choose a better one. The galaxy is big enough for all of us if we can learn to live in peace." The Zephyrian fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading back to their home territory. They carried with them a message that would spread across the galaxy. Humanity was not to be trifled with. 6 months later, the message had reached every corner of known space. The recording of Admiral Pierce's final statement played on countless worlds. To all species listening to this transmission, the human race desires peace and friendship with all sentient beings. We will trade with you, learn from you, and share the wonders of the universe with you. But if you come to our worlds with violence and conquest in your hearts, you will face the same fate as the Zephyrian Empire. What they fought was not our army. It was our children playing war games. Our real military has not yet begun to fight." The message ended with footage of the massive human fleet that had forced the Zephyrian surrender. 30,000 ships, and the narrator's voice explaining that this was only a small fraction of humanity's total military strength. On Earth, in the headquarters of the United Earth Naval Command, Admiral Pierce met with his staff to discuss the aftermath of the war. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving diplomatic requests from 47 different species. They all want to establish peaceful relations with humanity." Pierce smiled. "Good. That was the point. Sometimes you have to show strength to achieve peace." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as humanity's chief xenological advisor, added her thoughts. "The Zephyrians did us." Jake Morrison sat at the bar and took a slow sip of his whiskey. The drink burned just right as it went down his throat. Around him, the cantina buzzed with voices from dozens of different alien species. Some spoke in clicks and whistles, others in deep growls that made the floor vibrate. The air smelled like ozone and something that reminded him of cinnamon. Havens. Rest was the biggest space station in neutral territory. It floated in the void between star systems, where no single government could claim it. Traders, diplomats, and travelers from across the galaxy came here to do business. The cantina was the heart of it all, a place where beings who might be enemies back home could share a drink in peace. Jake's pilot, Lisa Grant, sat next to him nursing a blue drink that sparkled like stars. She was small but tough, with quick hands that could fly any ship ever built. On Jake's other side, Rick Torres worked on his third beer. Rick was their engineer, a big man who could fix anything with metal and wires. He had grease under his fingernails and a smile that made everyone feel safe. "Nice place," Lisa said, watching a group of floating jellyfish aliens drift past their table. Their bodies pulsed with soft light as they communicated in colors instead of words. "Better than that dive on Kepler Station," Rick replied. "At least. Here the bartender has forearms. Makes the drinks come faster." Jake laughed and was about to respond when a loud crash made everyone turn. Near the far wall, a group of Vorthek warriors had surrounded a table of small, crystal-like beings. The Vorthek were massive, standing over 8 feet tall with thick gray skin and muscles that looked like they could crush steel. They wore black armor with sharp spikes, and their eyes glowed red in the dim light. The crystal beings at the table were Zelani, a peaceful species that looked like living gemstones. They were only 3 feet tall and moved with careful, delicate steps. Their bodies rang like bells when they spoke, creating beautiful music that somehow formed words. Jake had met a few before, and found them to be gentle, honest people who had never hurt anyone. "Look what we have here," the largest Vorthek said, his voice like grinding stone. "Little crystal toys, all alone and far from home." The Zelani huddled together, their bodies flickering with nervous light. One of them, probably their leader, stepped forward. When he spoke, his voice was like wind chimes in a soft breeze. "Please, we mean no harm. We are simple traders. We only wish to conduct business and leave in peace." The Vorthek leader, commander, Vexver, according to the rank marks on his armor, reached out and grabbed the Zelani leader. The small being cried out in a sound like breaking glass. "You're not going anywhere, little crystal. You and your friends are coming with us. The slave markets on Vorthek Prime pay well for rare species." Jake felt his jaw tighten. Slavery had been illegal in most of the galaxy for centuries, but the Vorthek Empire still practiced it in their territory. They were known for taking prisoners from weaker species and selling them to the highest bidder. "We are protected by galactic law," the Zelani leader said, his voice shaking like crystal in an earthquake. "We have trading permits and safe passage documents." Vexver laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. "Your laws mean nothing here, Crystal. This is neutral space. No one will stop us." Jake looked around the cantina. The other patrons were all looking away, pretending not to see what was happening. Even the station security guards at the entrance seemed busy with their drinks. Everyone knew the Vorthik were dangerous, and no one wanted to get involved. "We should do something," Lisa whispered. 12 of them, 3 of us, Rick said quietly. "Not great odds." Jake finished his whiskey and set the glass down on the bar. The sound was sharp and clear in the sudden quiet. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. Every alien in the cantina turned to look at him. "Lisa," he said in a calm voice that somehow carried across the entire room, "hold my drink." Lisa took the empty glass from his hand, her eyes wide. She had heard that phrase before, usually right before Jake did something that made her question his sanity. Behind the bar, the old Centauran bartender named Flux quickly started moving bottles and glasses to safety. His 4 arms worked fast, and his large eyes showed he knew what was coming. Jake walked over to the Vorthik table, his boots clicking on the metal floor. Every step was steady and sure, like he was taking a walk in the park, instead of approaching 12 armed warriors who could tear him apart. "Excuse me," he said politely to Commander Thexfer. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The Vorthik leader looked down at Jake, his red eyes glowing brighter. "Human, this does not concern you. Walk away while you still can." Jake smiled. The kind of smile that made smart people run for cover. "See, that's where you're wrong. It concerns me a lot. See, I don't like bullies." "You are one small human against 12 Vorthik warriors," Thexfer growled. "You will die in seconds." "Maybe," Jake said, still smiling. "But you know what? I'm going to make those seconds count." What happened next became legend across the galaxy. Jake moved like lightning, grabbing a chair and swinging it at the nearest Vorthik. The warrior went down hard, his armor ringing like a bell. Rick and Lisa jumped into the fight, grabbing bottles and table legs as weapons. The cantina erupted in chaos. Aliens scrambled for cover as humans, and Vorthik crashed through tables and chairs. Jake fought like a man possessed, using everything he could get his hands on. He threw drinks in Vorthik eyes, used serving trays as shields, and turned the furniture into weapons. Lisa moved like a dancer, sliding under massive Vorthik arms and hitting pressure points that made the big aliens stumble. Rick fought like a bear, grabbing Vorthik warriors and throwing them into walls. The 3 humans moved together like they had practiced this dance 1,000 times. When the dust settled, all 12 Vorthik warriors lay unconscious on the floor. Jake, Lisa, and Rick stood in the wreckage, breathing hard but victorious. The Zelani traders were safe, their crystal bodies ringing with grateful music. Jake walked back to the bar, stepping over groaning Vorthik warriors. He sat down and looked at Lisa. "I'll take that drink back now," he said. Lisa handed him the glass, shaking her head in amazement. "You know the whole galaxy is going to hear about this, right?" Jake shrugged and signaled Flux for a refill. "Let them talk. Maybe next time bullies will think twice before picking on the little guys." Within hours, the security footage was spreading across the galactic network. The phrase "hold my drink" began appearing in alien databases as a warning sign. When humans said those words, smart aliens started looking for the exits. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans decided to get involved, the impossible became inevitable. The distress signal came through the emergency channels at 0400 hours, ship time. Captain Sam Rodriguez was in his quarters, trying to sleep while his ship underwent repairs at Luna Station. The harsh alarm woke him from dreams of home, and he rolled out of bed to answer the call. "Captain Rodriguez here," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Sir, we have a priority alert from the Galactic Council," came the voice of Lieutenant Amy Chun from the bridge. "You need to see this." Sam pulled on his uniform and made his way to the bridge of the USS Defiant. The ship was not pretty to look at with patched hull plates and mismatched weapon systems. But she was tough, and her crew was tougher. They had been through hell together, more times than Sam cared to count. Amy was waiting for him at the communication station. She was young but sharp, with quick eyes that missed nothing. Her fingers danced over the controls as she brought up the message. "It's from Kepler 442b, she said. "The mining colony there has gone dark. Last transmission was 3 days ago." Sam looked at the star chart on the main screen. Kepler 442b was a small world on the edge of known space, home to about 50,000 miners and their families. It was not an important place, just another rock where humans dug valuable metals from the ground. "Could be equipment failure," he said. "Those outer colonies lose communications all the time." "Sir, there's more," Amy said. She pressed another button, and the screen filled with static. Through the noise, Sam could hear voices shouting in panic and fear. "This is Colony Administrator Janet Wells. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. The hive has found us. They came out of the deep mines 3 days ago. We have sealed the emergency bunkers, but they won't hold long. We have 12,000 children down here. Someone please help us." The message cut off in static. Sam felt his blood turn cold. The hive was every spacer's nightmare, a species of insect-like creatures that reproduced by consuming organic matter. They were fast, vicious, and they never stopped until everything was dead. "How many people on that colony?" Sam asked. 50,000 registered residents, Amy replied. "Mostly families. The mining company hired a lot of couples with kids because they were willing to work the frontier." Sam called up the tactical display. Kepler 442 billion was 60 light-years away, a 2-day jump at maximum speed. By the time they got there, it would probably be too late. "Sir," came a voice from the engineering station. Tony Martinez looked up from his console, his face grim. Tony was the best demolitions expert in the fleet, a man who could make a bomb from spare parts and a prayer. "I've been monitoring the emergency channels. Every major fleet has refused the rescue mission." "What?" Sam turned to look at him. "Why?" The Altarian Space Navy ran the numbers. "They estimate 2 million HOD drones on the planet's surface. The Andromedian Defense Force calls it mathematical suicide. Even the Kryn said no, and they fight wars for fun." Sam stared at the display showing Kepler 442b, a small world billions of miles from anywhere important. 50,000 people who nobody cared about except their families. "Dr. Kate Williams to the bridge," he said into the com system. Kate arrived a few minutes later, still wearing her medical uniform. She was the ship's doctor, a woman who had seen too much death and refused to let it make her hard. Her hands were steady, her voice calm, but her eyes showed the fire that burned inside. "You heard about Kepler?" she asked. "I heard," Sam replied. "I also heard nobody else wants to go." Kate nodded. "The hive doesn't leave survivors. Those people have maybe 2 days of air left in those bunkers. After that, ... Sam looked around his bridge. Amy at communications, Tony at engineering, Kate standing beside his chair. These were good people, the kind who signed up to help others instead of getting rich. They had been through battles that would break most crews, and they were still here. "Amy," he said quietly, "get me a cup of coffee." She looked confused, but went to the small kitchen area behind the bridge. She came back with a steaming mug, black with 2 sugars the way he liked it. Sam took it from her and looked at his crew. "Amy, hold my coffee. We're going in." The word sent a chill through the bridge. Everyone knew what that phrase meant now. The fight at Haven's Rest had made humans famous across the galaxy. When a human said, "Hold my drink," smart aliens started running. "Sir," Amy said carefully, The odds are pretty bad. 2 million hive drones, orbital defenses, and we're just one ship. I know the odds, Sam replied. But those are our people down there. Kids who collect rocks and dream of seeing Earth someday. Families who just wanted to make a living on the frontier. We don't abandon our own. Tony grinned from his station. Captain, I've got enough explosives on this ship to crack a moon. Should be interesting. Kate just nodded. I'll prep the medical bay. We're going to need it. The next 2 days were the longest of Sam's life. The Defiant pushed her engines to the limit, racing through hyperspace toward Kepler 442b. Sam barely slept, spending his time planning an assault that everyone said was impossible. When they dropped out of hyperspace, the sight that greeted them was worse than his worst fears. The planet was covered in a black swarm that moved like oil across the surface. Hive drones filled the sky in clouds so thick they blocked out the sun. In orbit, massive bioships pulsed with organic weapons that could slice through any armor. Jesus, Amy whispered. There's so many of them. Orbital defenses are targeting us, Tony reported. I count 12 bioships and about 1 million flying drones. Sam looked at the planet below. Somewhere down there, 50,000 people were hiding in sealed bunkers, waiting for help that everyone said would never come. Children who had never seen a blue sky or felt real sunlight on their faces. All right, people, he said. Let's show these bugs what humans do when the odds are bad. What happened next defied every principle of military tactics. Sam flew the Defiant straight into the swarm, using the ship's superior speed to dodge bioweapons and ramming attacks. Tony turned the ship into a flying bomb, dropping explosives that carved holes in the hive formation. They made it to the surface through pure audacity and luck. The Defiant crash-landed near the first bunker complex, her hull smoking and her engines dead. Sam and his crew fought their way through waves of hive drones, using mining equipment and pure human stubbornness to reach the trapped civilians. The rescue operation was chaos. Kate treated wounded colonists while hive warriors tried to break through their defenses. Amy coordinated evacuations while calling in orbital strikes on her own position. Tony used mining charges to blast new tunnels when the main routes were blocked. Sam found himself carrying a wounded Zelani child, one of the few alien families on the colony. The little crystal being was cracked and dim, but still alive. Around them, hive drones swarmed like angry wasps, their claws and teeth gleaming in the emergency lights. This way, Tony shouted, pointing to a hole he had just blasted in the bunker. Wall, I've got a path to the landing zone. They ran through tunnels filled with smoke and screaming. Colonists stumbled in the darkness, carrying their children and whatever belongings they could grab. Behind them, the hive followed like a wave of death. The evacuation ships arrived just as the last bunker was about to fail. Sam watched as 47,000 people packed into cargo holds and passenger compartments. They were alive, scared, but alive. 3,000 people had died before the bunkers could be reached. Sam felt each loss like a knife in his chest. But 47,000 were going home to see another day as the rescue fleet jumped to hyperspace. Sam sat in a medical bay chair while Kate treated his wounds. His uniform was torn and bloody, and his hands shook from exhaustion. The analysts said 0 survivors, Kate said quietly. They said it was impossible. Sam looked out the small viewport at the stars. Good thing nobody told us that before we went in. Word of the rescue spread across the galaxy faster than light. The phrase "hold my coffee" joined the galactic vocabulary as a warning sign of human determination. When humans said those words, the impossible became just another Tuesday. The galaxy was learning that humans did not understand the word impossible. They only understood the word necessary. The Century Peace Summit was supposed to be the most important diplomatic event in galactic history. 200 species had sent their best representatives to the beautiful world of Serenity Prime, a planet covered in crystal forests and silver lakes. The summit happened only once every 100 years, when all the major treaties were renewed and the galaxy promised to keep the peace. Ambassador Chris Parker stood at the window of his hotel room, watching the sunrise paint the crystal trees in shades of gold and pink. Earth had been invited to the summit more as a courtesy than because anyone expected humans to contribute much. They were still the new kids in the galaxy, barely a century since first contact. Chris was a career diplomat, a man who had spent his life learning the delicate art of galactic politics. He spoke 12 alien languages and understood the cultural customs of dozens of species. His job was to smile, shake hands or claws or tentacles, and make sure humanity did not accidentally start a war. "Sir, the opening ceremony starts in an hour," said Lieutenant Danny Walsh, Chris's aide. Danny was young and eager, fresh from the diplomatic academy with a head full of theories about interspecies relations. "Thank you, Danny," Chris replied. "Have you reviewed the seating arrangements?" "Yes, sir. We're at table 47, between the Regellian Trade Union and the Polaris Mining Consortium. Not exactly prime real estate, but it could be worse." Chris smiled. The seating chart was a complex web of galactic politics. The most important species sat at the center tables, while newer or less influential civilizations were placed around the edges. Humanity's position near the back was about what he expected. The opening ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Hall, a massive dome made of living crystal that sang in harmony with the planet's magnetic field. Chris watched as representatives from across the galaxy took their seats. The Altarians with their flowing robes and wise eyes, the Andromedans in their ceremonial armor, the ancient Centaurians who had been keeping the peace for millennia. Everything was going perfectly until the Sikhs arrived. The hegemony of Sikhs was old, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They had ruled vast empires when other species were still learning to make fire. For the past 1,000 years, they had remained in their distant territories, ignoring the rest of the galaxy. No one had expected them to attend the summit. The Sikhs. Delegation entered the hall in absolute silence. They were tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were solid black, and they moved with the grace of predators. At their head walked Supreme Hegemon Vexthul, a being so ancient that some said he had been alive when the galaxy was young. "This is not good," Danny whispered. "The Sikhs haven't attended a summit in over 500 years. Chris felt a chill run down his spine. The Sikhs were not known for their diplomacy. They believed that all other species were inferior and should serve them. If they were here, it meant they wanted something. Vexthul walked to the center of the hall, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Every representative watched him with fear and respect. The Sikhs had technology that made other species look like children playing with toys. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Vexthul said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall without any need for amplification. "I come before you today with a simple message. The age of equality is over. The Sikhs' hegemony reclaims its rightful place as rulers of this galaxy." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Chris felt his blood turn cold. This was not a diplomatic negotiation. This was a declaration of war. "We offer you a choice," Vexthul continued. "Surrender half of your worlds to Sikh's control, and we will allow you to exist as our servants. Refuse, and we will take everything." 2. Demonstrate their power. The Sikhs activated hidden devices around the planet. The sky above Serenity Prime darkened as massive ships materialized from hyperspace. The Sikhs' fleet was enormous, filled with technology that looked like it had been grown rather than built. Panic spread through the assembly. Representatives began sending urgent messages to their home worlds. preparing to surrender before the Sikhs could carry out their threat. Chris watched in horror as species that had been independent for millennia began bowing to the Sikhs' ultimatum. "Sir," Danny whispered urgently, "we need to contact Earth. The Security Council needs to know about this." Chris looked at his tablet, reviewing the Sikhs' demands. They wanted control of the richest star systems, the most important trade routes, the worlds, with the largest populations. It was not negotiation. It was conquest with a polite face. "Danny," Chris said calmly, "hold my coffee." Danny took the cup from Chris's hands, his eyes wide with confusion. He had heard stories about what happened when humans said those words. But this was a diplomatic summit, not a battlefield. Chris stood up from his seat and walked to the center of the hall. Every eye in the assembly followed him, alien and human alike. He pulled out his personal communicator and began making calls. "This is Ambassador Parker," he said into the device. "I need to speak with Admiral Collins immediately." The Sikhs delegation watched with amusement as Chris spoke quietly into his communicator. To them, he looked like a desperate insect trying to call for help that would never come. "Sir," Vexthal said with cold disdain, "you are interrupting a formal surrender. Return to your seat." Chris looked up at the ancient alien and smiled. It was not a diplomatic smile. It was the same smile Jake Morrison had worn before he demolished 12 Vorthik warriors. "I'm sorry, but I think there's been a misunderstanding," Chris said. "See, we humans have a policy about bullies. We don't negotiate with them." Within an hour, human ships began arriving in the system. Not warships, but civilian vessels. Mining ships, cargo haulers, exploration craft, and colony transports. To the aliens watching, it looked like humanity was sending everything they had, no matter how useless. The Sikhs laughed at the pathetic human response. Their ancient dreadnoughts could destroy entire fleets, and the humans were sending ships that looked like they were held together with spare parts and prayer. "Is this your great fleet?" Vexthal asked mockingly. "Construction ships and garbage haulers? You insult us with this display." Chris was still on his communicator, coordinating with the incoming ships. "Actually, those aren't warships. They're problem solvers." What happened next became known as the Serenity Gambit. The human civilian fleet did not attack the Sikhs directly. Instead, they did what humans did best. They improvised. The mining ships began stripping asteroids from the local belt, creating a massive debris field that jammed the Sikh sensors. Construction vessels literally built a fortress around Serenity Prime, using raw materials and industrial equipment to create defenses that appeared out of nowhere. The exploration ships evacuated the summit, delegates, while the Sikhs fleet tried to figure out what was happening. One moment they were facing a helpless planet. The next they were surrounded by humans who treated their ancient technology like a minor inconvenience. "What are you doing?" Vexthal demanded, his composure finally cracking. "Problem solving," Chris replied. "See, you've got a problem. You think you can come in here and threaten everyone. But now you're trapped in a system controlled by humans who really don't like being threatened." The Sikhs found themselves in an impossible position. Their powerful fleet was blinded by debris, their sensors jammed by human equipment, and their weapons unable to target anything through the chaos. The humans had turned space itself into a weapon. "You cannot defeat us," Vexthal said, but his voice showed uncertainty for the first time. "We are the Sikhs. We ruled this galaxy when your species was nothing." "Maybe," Chris said, "but that was then. This is now. And right now, you've got a choice to make." Chris broadcast his message on all frequencies, so every species in the galaxy could hear. "You can leave peacefully and never come back. Or you can stay and find out what humans do when we're really motivated." The standoff lasted for 3 days. The Sikhs' fleet remained trapped in the debris field, while human ships continued to arrive. Not just military vessels now, but civilian ships from every human colony. Families in cargo haulers, miners in converted freighters, even children in racing. Ships. The message was clear. Humanity was not just sending their military. They were sending everyone. Every human who could fly a ship was coming to Serenity Prime, ready to fight an ancient empire that had terrified the galaxy for millennia. Finally, Vexthal sent a message to Chris. You would risk everything for species that are not even your allies? That's what we do, Chris replied. We show up when bullies need to be stopped. The Sikh's fleet withdrew from the system, their ancient pride wounded, but their ships intact. They returned to their distant territories, and the galaxy learned that the age of Sikh's dominance was over. The summit ended with a new treaty, one that included humanity as a full partner in galactic affairs. The phrase, "hold my coffee," became an official diplomatic term used when one species was about to do something that would change everything. Chris sat in his hotel room that night, watching the crystal trees shimmer in the starlight. Danny brought him a fresh cup of coffee and sat down beside him. "Sir," Danny said, "how did you know it would work?" Chris smiled and took a sip of his coffee. "I didn't. But sometimes you have to try the impossible just to see what happens." The galaxy had learned another lesson about humanity. They did not rue. The war began 6 months after the Serenity Summit. The Sikhs had not forgiven their humiliation at the hands of the humans, and they found allies among species who feared humanity's growing influence. The Vorthic Empire, still bitter about their defeat at Haven's Rest, joined the Sikhs' alliance. Other species followed, either from fear or from greed. Fleet Admiral Ben Collins stood on the bridge of the UE's Vengeance, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The enemy fleet approaching. Earth was the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. Sikhs dreadnoughts that looked like ancient cathedrals of war. Vorthic battle cruisers bristling with weapons. Ships from a dozen other species, all united in their desire to crush humanity. "Sir, the outer defense grid is reporting massive enemy." "Contacts," said Commander Sarah Johnson from the tactical station. She was young for her rank, but she had earned it through 3 years of desperate fighting. Her fingers moved across the controls with practiced precision. "How many?" Ben asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. "Over 2,000 ships, sir. The Sikhs have awakened their ancient fleet. Some of those dreadnoughts are older than our entire civilization." Ben nodded grimly. The war had not gone well for humanity. Despite their individual victories, humans were outnumbered and outgunned. The Sikhs had technology that bent the laws of physics, while the Vorthic had sheer numbers and a warrior culture that glorified death in battle. "What about our allies?" Ben asked. "The Jelani have sent their entire fleet," Sarah replied. "All 12 ships." Ben almost smiled at that. The Zelani were good people, but their idea of a warship was a converted cargo hauler with a mining laser bolted to the front. They were brave, but they were not going to tip the balance of this fight. "Sir?" called out Mike Patterson from the weapons station. "The Andromedans are requesting permission to withdraw their ships from the defense grid." Ben felt his heart sink. The Andromedans had been humanity's strongest allies, providing ships and technology for the war effort. If they were pulling out now, it meant they thought the battle was lost. "Granted," Ben said. "Tell them we understand." The bridge fell silent as the Andromedan ships began jumping to hyperspace. Ben watched them go and felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. Earth was about to face the largest invasion fleet in galactic history, and humanity was going to face it alone. "Sir," came the voice of Lieutenant Linda Rodriguez from the communications station, "we're getting reports from the outer colonies. The enemy is hitting them hard." Ben looked at the strategic display. Red markers appeared across human space as enemy forces attacked mining colonies, research stations, and frontier settlements. The Sikhs and their allies were not just targeting military installations. They were trying to wipe out humanity entirely. How bad? He asked. New Beijing is gone, Linda said, her voice tight with emotion. The Sikhs used some kind of planet-killer weapon. 20 million people, sir. Just ... Ben felt something cold settle in his stomach. New Beijing had been one of humanity's most important colonies, home to families who had spent generations building a new life among the stars. Now it was nothing but debris and radiation. Sir, Sarah said quietly, the enemy fleet is entering the outer system. They'll be here in 6 hours. Ben looked around his bridge. These were good people, the best humanity had to offer. Sarah with her brilliant tactical mind. Mike with his steady hands and sharp eye for targeting. Linda with her gift for keeping communications open when everything was falling apart. We're going to die today. All of them. The math was simple and brutal. The enemy had 10 ships for every human vessel, and their technology was superior in every way. Earth's defenses would hold for maybe an hour before being overwhelmed. Sir, Linda said, we're getting a transmission from Earth. General Morrison wants to speak with you. Ben smiled despite everything. Jake Morrison had been promoted to general after his heroics at Haven's Rest, and now he commanded Earth's ground. Defenses. If anyone could find a way to make the impossible happen, it was Jake. Put him through, Ben said. Jake's face appeared on the main screen, grinning like he was about to go on vacation instead of facing the end of the world. Behind him, Ben could see the frantic activity of the war room, with staff officers running. Between control stations. Ben, how's it looking up there? Jake asked. Not good, Ben replied honestly. We're outnumbered 10-1, and that's not counting the planet-killer weapons. I'm sorry, Jake. I don't think we can stop them. Jake's grin got wider. Well, that's good news. Good news? Ben stared at his old friend. Jake, they're going to glass every human world. This is the end of our species. Nah, Jake said, waving his hand dismissively. See, Ben, you're thinking like a military officer. You're worried about tactics and strategy and all that boring stuff. But down here on Earth, we've been thinking like humans. Ben felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen that look in Jake's eyes before, right before he did something that made military analysts weep. Jake, what did you do? Nothing yet, Jake replied, but I'm about to. Ben, hold my beer. Earth's got this. The transmission cut off, leaving Ben staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew looked confused and worried. They had all heard the stories about what happened when humans said those words. Sir, Sarah said carefully, what do you think he's planning? Ben was about to answer when every alarm on the ship began screaming at once. The tactical display lit up with contacts appearing all across human space. Not enemy ships, but human vessels. Thousands of them appearing from hyperspace in perfect coordination. My God, Mike whispered. Where did they all come from? Ben watched in amazement as the display filled with human ships. Not just military vessels, but civilian craft. Mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even racing yachts. Every human ship in the galaxy was converging on Earth. Sir, Linda said, her voice filled with awe. I'm getting signals from every human colony. They're all saying the same thing. What are they saying? Ben asked. They're coming home. What followed was the most audacious military operation in galactic history. It was not a battle plan in any conventional sense. It was a statement written in fire, and steel across the void of space. The human fleet did not try to fight the enemy conventionally. Instead, they did what humans did best. They improvised. Mining ships rammed Sikh's dreadnoughts, their hulls packed with explosives. Cargo haulers deployed clouds of debris that blinded enemy sensors. Passenger liners evacuated populations from doomed worlds while simultaneously ramming enemy battle cruisers. The strategy made no tactical sense, but it worked because it was completely unpredictable. The Sikh's fleet was designed to fight organized military forces, not swarms of civilian ships piloted by people who treated suicide attacks as tactical options. On the surface of Earth, Jake Morrison coordinated the defense from his bunker deep. Beneath the Pentagon, every human colony was connected to his command center, and every ship in the fleet was following his orders. But his orders were not about tactics or strategy. They were about something much simpler. This is General Morrison. To all human forces, his voice carried across the battle. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten our families, when you attack our children, when you try to wipe us out because you're afraid of what we might become. The battle raged for 18 hours. Human ships fought with a ferocity that terrified their enemies. When their weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels. When their ships were crippled, they set them to explode in the middle of enemy formations. When they were boarded, they fought hand-to-hand in the corridors until the very end. Ben watched from the bridge of the Vengeance as a cargo hauler called the Lucky strike rammed a Sikh's dreadnought. The explosion lit up space like a new star, taking both ships with it. He knew the captain of the Lucky Strike, a woman named Carol Davis, who had 3 kids and a husband waiting for her on Mars. "Sir," Sarah said, her voice shaking, "the enemy is breaking formation. They're running." Ben looked at the tactical display in disbelief. The massive Sikh's fleet was indeed retreating, their ancient dreadnoughts limping away from Earth with their hulls smoking. The Vorthik battle cruisers followed, their crews too shaken to continue the fight. "They can't understand us," Mike said, staring at his weapons console. "They've never faced an enemy that fights like this." Ben nodded slowly. The human fleet had taken massive casualties. Nearly half of their ships were gone, and the survivors were battered and bleeding. But they had done something that military theorists said was impossible. They had broken the will of a vastly superior force through sheer audacity. The war continued for another 6 months, but the outcome was never in doubt after the Battle of Earth. The Sikhs and their allies found themselves facing an enemy that did not fight by the rules. Human ships appeared where they should not be, did things that made no tactical sense, and refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. The psychological impact was devastating. Sikh's crews began deserting their posts rather than face humans in battle. Vorthik warriors, legendary for their courage, started showing signs of what human doctors called combat stress. The alliance began to fracture as species decided that fighting humanity was not worth the cost. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a simple message. The Sikhs sent a dealie. 1 year after the war ended, the galaxy had learned to live with its new reality. The Galactic Council met in a rebuilt station orbiting Centauri Prime, with humanity holding a permanent seat at the main table. The phrase "hold my drink" had become an official diplomatic term, logged in 17 different alien languages and used as a formal warning when any species was about to attempt the impossible. Captain Nova Williams stood on the bridge of the Bruce, UESF Pioneer, watching the stars shift outside the viewports. Her ship was humanity's newest exploration vessel, built with technology shared by grateful alien allies and powered by the same human determination that had won the war. She was 32 years old, with steady hands and eyes that saw possibilities where others saw only problems. "Captain," called Alex Tonson from the pilot station, "we're approaching the edge of the void beyond." Nova looked at the navigation display. The void beyond was marked on every star chart with warnings in dozens of languages. It was a region of space where the laws of physics seemed to break down, where entire fleets had vanished without a trace. The few ships that had returned brought tales of impossible geometries and reality that shifted like water. "What do our sensors show?" Nova asked. "That's the problem, ma'am," replied Dr. Kevin Chong from the science station. Kevin was the ship's chief scientist, a man who loved puzzles that had no solution. "The sensors show everything and nothing. Space-time distortions, gravity wells that shouldn't exist, and energy readings that make no sense." Nova nodded. The void beyond had been off-limits to exploration for over 1,000 years. Every major species had tried to map it, and every attempt had ended in disaster. The Altarians had lost an entire fleet there. The Andromedans had sent their best scientists, and none had returned. "Engineering report," Nova said. "All systems." "Green, Captain," came the voice of Maria Santos from the engine room. Maria was the best engineer in the fleet, a woman who could keep a ship running with spare parts and determination. "Though I have to say, the readings from that region are making my instruments very unhappy." Nova smiled. Her crew was the best. Humanity had to offer. Alex could fly anything with engines. Kevin could solve problems that had no answers, and Maria could fix things that should not be fixable. They had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never return. "Captain," said Alex, "we're getting final transmissions from command." Nova activated the communications system. Admiral Collins appeared on the main screen, his face serious but proud. Behind him, she could see the bustle of Luna Station's command center. "Nova, this is your final briefing," the Admiral said. "The Galactic Council has officially advised against this mission. The Centaurians call it an act of cosmic madness. The Altarians say it violates the natural order. Even our allies think we've finally lost our minds. What's our mission, sir?" Nova asked. "Your mission is to do what humans do best," Collins replied. "Go where no one else will go. See what no one else can see. And if you find something impossible out there, figure out how to make friends with it." Nova felt the familiar thrill that came before every great adventure. This was what humanity was meant for, pushing boundaries, exploring the unknown, and proving that the word impossible was just another challenge to overcome. "Any final advice, Admiral?" she asked. Collins smiled. "Remember what we learned in the war. The universe is big and strange, and full of things that want to kill us. But we're humans. We're too stubborn to die and too curious to quit. Show the void beyond what that means." The transmission ended, leaving Nova alone with her crew and the impossible mission ahead. She looked around the bridge at the people who had chosen to follow her into the unknown. "Well, team," she said, "you heard the Admiral. Time to go make the impossible look easy." As the Pioneer approached the boundary of the void beyond, space itself began to change. The stars outside the viewports shifted colors, becoming shades that had no names. Gravity waves washed over the ship, making everyone feel like they were falling upward. The ship's computers began reporting readings that contradicted the basic laws of physics. "Captain," Kevin said, his voice filled with wonder and terror, "I'm reading structures out there that shouldn't exist. Space-time is folded into shapes that have more than 3 dimensions. And there's something else, ... something alive." Nova felt her heart race. Every species in the galaxy had theories about what lived in the void beyond. Ancient intelligences that existed outside normal reality. Beings of pure energy that could reshape matter with a thought. Things so alien that contact with them would drive normal minds insane. "Alex," Nova said calmly, "take us in." "Ma'am," Alex replied, "are you sure about this? The navigation computers are showing courses that lead in 6 different directions." "At once. Just pick one," Nova said. If we're going to get lost, we might as well do it with style. The Pioneer crossed into the void beyond, and reality exploded around them. The ship tumbled through dimensions that existed between the normal. 3. Past structures that looked like crystallized music and energy patterns that sang in colors. Outside the viewports, Nova could see things that her brain refused to process. Geometric shapes that were bigger on the inside, stars that burned with cold fire, and creatures made of living space-time. Hull integrity holding, Maria reported. From engineering, her voice steady despite the chaos. Though I have to admit, the laws of physics down here are more like suggestions. Kevin, what are you reading? Nova asked. Captain, I'm detecting intelligence out there. Massive, ancient, and completely unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's trying to communicate. The ship shuddered as something touched their hull. Not physically, but in ways that made the metal sing and the lights flicker in patterns that looked almost like language. Nova made a decision that would have terrified any rational being. She picked up her coffee cup from the arm of her captain's chair and handed it to Alex. Alex, hold my drink. I'm going to go make first contact. Alex took the cup, his eyes wide. Captain, you can't be serious. We don't even know what we're dealing with out there. That's never stopped us before, Nova replied. She activated the ship's external communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Nova Williams of the UES Pioneer, representing humanity and the Galactic Alliance. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship. We know you're out there, and we'd like to talk. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The ship was suddenly filled with music that existed in mathematical equations, colors that spoke in emotions, and thoughts that arrived as geometric patterns. The crew staggered under the psychic weight of contact with an intelligence that existed on levels they could barely comprehend. But Nova stood firm. Her mind focused on the simple human truth that had carried her species across the galaxy. When you meet someone new, you introduce yourself and try to be polite. I know this is strange for you, she said, speaking to the vast intelligence that surrounded their ship. We're probably not what you expected. We're young and loud, and we break things accidentally. But we're here because we believe that the unknown should be explored, not feared. The alien presence paused, its attention focusing on the small ship and its impossible crew. For a moment, Nova felt the weight of a mind older than her entire civilization, examining humanity with curiosity instead of hostility. Then, incredibly, the presence laughed. Not with sound, but with ripples in space-time that made the stars dance and the ship ring like a bell. It was the laughter of a cosmic entity that had been alone for eons, finally meeting someone brave enough to say, "Hello, Dot." What followed was the strangest first contact in galactic history. The beings of the void beyond were indeed ancient and powerful, entities that existed partially outside normal reality. They had been watching the galaxy for millions of years, waiting for a species that was curious enough and brave enough to make contact. They had expected explorers. They had expected scientists. They had expected philosophers or mystics or beings of pure energy. They had not expected humans who treated impossible physics like a minor inconvenience and responded to cosmic horror with coffee and casual conversation. The contact lasted for 3 days in ship time, though the concepts of time and space became flexible in the void beyond. Nova and her crew learned about dimensions beyond the normal 3, about the true age of the universe, and about mysteries that would take humanity centuries to understand. When the Pioneer finally returned to normal space, they brought with them gifts of knowledge that would revolutionize galactic science. They also brought a message from the beings of the void beyond, an invitation for humanity to explore the deepest mysteries of reality. As partners in cosmic discovery, Nova stood on the bridge as they approached Luna Station, watching Earth grow larger in the viewports. Her crew was exhausted but exhilarated, their minds still reeling from contact with the impossible. "Captain," Alex said, "how do we even begin to explain what we saw out there?" Nova smiled and took her coffee cup back from him. "We tell them the truth. We went looking for the impossible, and we found it. And it was just the beginning." The return of the Pioneer sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The humans had not only survived contact with the void beyond, they had made friends with it. The beings that other species feared were now S.